My eyes suddenly opened. The icy seawater rushed into my lungs, creating a feeling of intense suffocation, as if it still remained in my throat. I instinctively touched my neck, my skin felt warm, and breathing was smooth. There was no sound of towering waves in my ears, nor the loud laughter of Chloe and Eric. I looked down at my hands. They were intact, without any signs of being cut by the sharp rocks in the seawater. The screen of my phone lit up, showing a clear date, June 12th. It was the day before the nightmare from my previous life. At that time in my previous life, Chloe, the school's beauty, used the excuse of celebrating her high school graduation to promote the fact that she had rented a luxury ocean liner. She organized a 3-night graduation party with everyone in the class. Together with my ex-boyfriend Eric, she coerced everyone into attending the party. On that cruise ship sailing towards the open sea, they forced me to the edge of the deck. Amidst my desperate cries for help, Chloe personally pushed me into the cold, dark ocean. I was left adrift in the currents, freezing to death in the vast expanse of the sea. I took a deep breath, trying to suppress the coldness in my heart. My face showed no emotion at all. My phone started vibrating on the table, with Chloe's name flashing on the screen. I pressed the answer button, bringing the phone to my ear without saying a word. Listen. All the names have been reported to the cruise ship company, Chloe said, her voice confident and authoritative, accompanied by the sound of her fingernails clicking against the table. We'll meet at the dock at 8 o'clock tomorrow morning. You must be there on time. If you dare to absent, or ruin everyone's fun, you know what the consequences will be. Eric was also with me. He said, if you don't come, you won't get a single cent of the money you previously paid forward for him. Immediately following this, Eric's mocking laughter came through the phone. Yes, dear, don't disappoint everyone. This is a luxurious cruise on international waters. Chloe worked hard to get this ticket. If you don't show respect, we might really end up apart. Listening to their nonsense on the phone, I felt a sense of nausea. In my previous life, it was because of Eric's deceitful behavior and Chloe's threats that I fell into the trap step by step. I understand, I replied calmly, my voice remaining steady. Well, at least you know your place. If you're late by 1 minute tomorrow, I'll make you lose face in front of the whole school. Chloe snorted coldly and hung up the phone. After hanging up the phone, I didn't compromise weakly like in my previous life, nor did I engage in any unnecessary arguments with her on the phone. I stood up and walked straight out of the room. Half an hour later, I arrived at the emergency department of the largest hospital in the city center. I queued up to register, and I was assigned to the regular emergency surgery department. When I met with the doctor, I calmly described my symptoms. Persistent dull pain in the lower right abdomen, accompanied by mild nausea, which had been going on for several hours. The doctor conducted a standard physical examination, and then ordered blood tests and an abdominal ultrasound. While waiting for the results, I went to the hospital bathroom. I took out a bottle of medication that I had prepared before arriving at the hospital. It was a common gastrointestinal drug that could stimulate intestinal motility in the short term, causing localized spasms. The dosage was completely within safe limits, but it would still cause extremely typical abdominal pain. 20 minutes later, I returned to the consulting room. By this time, due to the effect of the medication, my face looked somewhat pale, and fine beads of sweat appeared on my forehead. The ultrasound report indicated mild congestion in the area of my appendix. During the doctor's examination, significant tenderness and rebound pain were detected in my abdomen. Doctor, I'm experiencing severe pain in my right lower abdomen. I can't even stand upright. I sat down on the chair, my voice hoarse, and my body slightly curled up. The doctor, after reviewing the examination results and considering the extremely typical symptoms, quickly made a diagnosis: acute appendicitis. He recommended immediate hospitalization for observation, along with a laparoscopic examination. Doctor, I have a very important appointment tomorrow. Can you issue me a formal diagnosis certificate and hospital admission permit? If necessary, I would be willing to cooperate with the hospital immediately. I looked at the doctor with a very composed and determined tone. The doctor took a look at me, then printed out a formal diagnosis certificate stamped with the hospital seal. It clearly stated, Acute appendicitis, requiring immediate hospitalization. Strenuous exercise and travel are prohibited. After receiving the certificate, I didn't leave the hospital immediately. Instead, I quickly completed the necessary procedures to be hospitalized and was placed in the emergency observation room. I put on the hospital uniform and had a drip of saline started. At 4 p.m., I took out my phone and took a photo of the hospital identification bracelet on my wrist, along with the diagnosis certificate placed next to my bed. The official seal, the name of the hospital, the signature of the attending physician, and my name were clearly visible, with no discrepancies. I sent this photo to the class's official communication group, along with a short message. Due to sudden acute appendicitis, I have been hospitalized and waiting for my surgery schedule. I cannot attend tomorrow's graduation party. Have a great voyage. Within seconds of sending the message, the lively group became quiet instantly. Then, Chloe called me again, her voice sounding urgent and agitated. I pressed the answer and recording buttons. What the hell are you doing? Do you think you can get away with creating a sick excuse? From the other end of the line, Chloe's voice sounded incredulous and furious. I spent so much effort organizing this plan, and now you tell me that you're going to be hospitalized? Are you trying to embarrass me on purpose? Get up now. I need to be at the doc tomorrow. Chloe, I said calmly, my voice weak but logical. The diagnosis certificate was issued by the First Municipal Hospital. It's signed by the attending doctor and stamped with the hospital seal. If you doubt its authenticity, you can contact the hospital at any time to verify it, or you can come to room 04 in the emergency room to see me. I'm currently lying in bed, receiving in 4 drip. The doctor clearly stated that if I try to get up and cause an appendix rupture, the consequences will be my own. Are you sure you're willing to take on that medical responsibility? Chloe was left speechless after hearing my argument, which seemed completely legal and without any flaws. And also, I added, to avoid wasting everyone's time, I have already submitted a leave request to the teacher in charge of my class and to the school administration. The hospital certification has also been sent to the academic affairs department. Chloe spoke through gritted teeth on the other end of the phone. Okay, you're doing great. Do you really think that just not coming will solve anything? Eric, you have to tell her. The phone was handed over to Eric. His voice sounded exasperated. What's the matter with you? I told my friends that you would be coming. Now you're causing a mess. Where do I put my face? Get out of the hospital quickly. I'll pick you up tomorrow. I sneered and spoke clearly into the phone. Eric, the doctor diagnosed me with acute appendicitis. Are you really asking a patient who needs surgery to leave the hospital and go to the party with you? Is that how you act as a boyfriend? If that's the case, then our relationship really needs to be re-examined. Without giving them any chance to argue, I hung up the phone. I also backed up all the call recordings in the cloud, and along with that, I packed and archived all the legal medical documents issued by the hospital. The ward was so quiet that one could only hear the sound of the drip timer, while my phone screen kept flashing intermittently. In the social media class groups, the ripple effects of that diagnostic report and leave request I sent out had already begun to spread. The usual group members who would chorus with Chloe now seemed to have a subtle change in attitude. I closed my phone, feeling a chill in my heart. In my previous life, Chloe created a small group around herself at school, aiming to establish herself as a celebrity socialite. But in reality, she used class activities or graduation celebrations as cover to force her group members to share the costs of these activities. She even secretly kept aside the funds given by sponsors for the group's activities. As for Eric, the seemingly wealthy second-generation rich man, he was actually deeply in debt. He had to borrow money from me and plead with me in front of others in order to maintain his false facade. In my previous life, I was completely kept in the dark. But this time, those hidden, dirty corners will be used to completely destroy them. I turned on my computer and logged into an anonymous encrypted email account. The first email I sent was given to Lisa and Mark, the most obedient members of Chloe's gang. The email contained no unnecessary fluff. Instead, it contained several extremely clear photos and audio files. In the photos, Chloe was shown holding receipts for the limited edition luxury bags she bought using the Outward Bound fund that everyone had contributed to. The audio file was a recording of Chloe's conversation with Eric in a private setting. In the recording, Chloe spoke in a harsh and disdainful tone, criticizing Lisa and Mark as free labor and saying that she wouldn't bother taking them along if it weren't for the need to share the cost of the cruise. These evidence were things I learned in my previous life, and I had already collected and prepared them in advance before anything went wrong this time. The pop-up window indicating successful email sending appeared. I can imagine the expressions on Lisa's and Mark's faces at this moment, as they sit in their rooms, packing their bags and preparing to board the ship tomorrow. The foundation of trust is completely shattered in an instant. Then, I opened the second encrypted page and began to focus on the most critical aspect, the cruise ship's fuel supply. In my previous life, the cruise ship that Chloe rented experienced a complete loss of power during the storm. The main reason for this was that the ship used inferior and watered-down fuel, which caused the generators to malfunction and stop working during the severe vibrations. To save a significant amount of money for her own expenses, Chloe tried to minimize the cost of renting the ship by finding an unlicensed fuel supplier. Through a legitimate maritime intermediary platform, I was able to find the contact information of that unscrupulous seller who specialized in selling cheap and inferior fuel. I used a temporarily registered account and sent the contact information of that private oil supplier, along with a low-price fuel discount offer, to Chloe's phone via an anonymous text message. At the end of the message, I added a sentence. According to internal information, oil prices are set to rise significantly tomorrow. This supplier still has some low-cost supplies available. They are limited in quantity and can only be reserved tonight. This could save you nearly half of your budget. For Chloe, who is eager to save money to cover the losses caused by her unauthorized use of public funds, this was undoubtedly a golden opportunity to save money. With her greed and arrogance, she would definitely not miss this chance to save money. Half an hour later, my maritime logistics monitoring software indicated that a tanker belonging to that private oil supplier was heading towards the dock, ready to fill the luxury cruise ship that Chloe had reserved with those low-quality fuels that could potentially cause disasters. It was already late at night. My phone vibrated again. This time, it was a private message from Lisa. Is what happened to you being hospitalized true? Will you really not be there tomorrow? Lisa's words were filled with doubt and hesitation. She no longer showed the arrogance she used to show off when she was with Chloe. I looked at the screen, a smile appearing on my lips, and quickly replied, "The diagnosis report and medical records are in the group chat. The doctor advised me to stay in bed. Wish you all a great time tomorrow. But I heard that the weather at sea is quite unstable lately, so please be careful on the ship." I didn't mention anything about the email, nor did I say anything negative about Chloe. Some seeds, once planted, can grow into towering trees under the nourishment of doubt and greed, tearing apart all hypocrisy. 10 minutes later, on social media, Chloe posted a new post with a photo of herself wearing a gown, standing behind the dock. The title read, "Tomorrow's Party at Sea, a perfect journey for those who truly possess nobility." In the comments section of that post, those who were supposed to praise her were silent. No one liked or commented on her post. I leaned back on the hospital bed, slowly turning off the screen of my phone. The next morning, the weather was terrifyingly gloomy. The sky was covered by a thick layer of dark clouds, as heavy as lead. The wind from the sea brought with it a salty, damp smell that was extremely unpleasant to breathe. At 7:30 a.m., hundreds of people had already gathered around the dock. Many students who hadn't been invited to the event, faculty members, and onlookers who had heard about the event all gathered outside the stands and fences. In the distance, the white luxury cruise ship was docked there. A huge banner hung on the side of the ship, with the words "Graduation Parade" designed by Chloe written in gold-encrusted letters. The words revealed a sense of arrogance and luxury that was unmistakable. Near the center of the dock, a red carpet was laid out, surrounded by flashes of light. Chloe wore a custom-made evening gown, with a delicate makeup applied to her face. She was holding hands with Eric, who wore a brand-name suit. Behind them, several people with various expressions of faces followed them. Chloe held her head high, showing off the luxurious amenities on the ship to the lower-grade students gathered around, enjoying the envious glances from everyone. "Some people think that if they don't come along, they can ruin our fun today," Chloe said, raising her voice, deliberately addressing the onlookers and the live cameras. It's ridiculous. Without those who haven't seen the world, our cruise vacation will be even more enjoyable. Today is definitely a day for celebration. Eric laughed along, agreeing with her. Yes, some people are born to be at the bottom of society. They simply don't have the fortune to enjoy such luxurious cruise ships. Just as they were mocking openly, ready to step onto the boarding ladder, there was a sudden commotion at the edge of the crowd. Move aside. Please give way. It's an ambulance and medical evacuation vehicle. An ambulance, marked with the logo of the Municipal First Hospital, and a taxi stood side by side at the very entrance of the dock. The crowd quickly stepped aside. As the doors opened, I stood there, wearing a very conspicuous and bulky hospital gown. I had medical bandages around my hands, and a catheter was attached to my arm. My face was pale, without any trace of color. Under the astonished gaze of hundreds of teachers, students, and journalists, I refused the help of the caregiver and insisted on sitting in a wheelchair. The caregiver pushed the wheelchair slowly towards the center of the red carpet. The once noisy and chaotic dock suddenly fell into complete silence. Everyone's gaze was fixed on me, as well as my dazzling hospital gown and the blue hospital bracelet on my wrist. The crowd surrounding her immediately erupted into murmurs and discussions. Wow! Is she really that sick? She came here without even changing her hospital clothes. Look at that 4-needle and the bracelets on her hand, and that official diagnosis document with the company seal. It's impossible for her to fake this. Her face is completely pale. Didn't Chloe post updates on social media yesterday claiming that she was faking her illness just to dampen everyone's spirits? That's too cruel, especially considering her current state. Yes, appendicitis requires surgery. Forcing someone to go out into the sea is simply cruel. Hearing the constant whispers around them, Chloe's face instantly became extremely ugly. Her carefully defined eyes twitched violently, and her eyes burned with anger and panic, almost impossible to conceal. She originally wanted to take advantage of my absence in front of everyone, to spread rumors about me, that I was sick, unable to fit in with others, and deliberately acting in a hostile manner. But she never expected that I would actually appear at the dock in such a shocking and obvious manner, presenting the most real and undeniable evidence before all the teachers and students in the school. Eric stood beside her, his smile instantly fading away. The disdainful looks from those around him made him feel like he was being stared at with a dagger in his back. He tried to act tough, standing over me with a cold smile, trying to hide his embarrassment with arrogance. What are you doing here? Trying to win people's sympathy by acting sick? Don't think you can get sympathy just by wearing a hospital uniform. Let me tell you, you don't have the right to be on the open sea. Don't block the way here. I paid no attention to Eric's frustration, not even giving him a single glance. I raised my head, my expression showing weakness, but my eyes were filled with determination as I looked at Chloe. I took out a beautifully crafted wooden box from my arms. With a smile, I handed it to her, in front of all the media, teachers, and classmates. Chloe, as a former friend and classmate, I must stay in the hospital due to acute appendicitis and cannot join you in celebrating your graduation. My voice was not loud, but through the phones of the reporters and onlookers, my words could be heard clearly everywhere. But I still decided to let the caregiver take me along. I've prepared a special graduation gift for you. Under the gaze of everyone, I slowly opened the wooden box. Inside, there was a bottle of limited edition champagne, worth a considerable amount of money. The bottle was engraved with a delicate gold inscription, wishing you a smooth journey and memories that will last a lifetime. This bottle was specially ordered for you and Eric by me. I will speak slowly and clearly, one word at a time. I wish you a smooth journey across the open sea, and that you remember this as one of the most unforgettable experiences of your lives. The people watching around her took out their phones to take pictures. Many of them were moved by the scene of someone who was in a poor health condition still able to send blessings, and some even let out sighs of admiration. Chloe was extremely uncomfortable standing there, surrounded by countless screens of cameras. To maintain her image of a noble and generous socialite, she had to suppress the words of criticism that were on the tip of her tongue. She managed to hide her anger, which was almost bursting out, and forced out a forced smile that looked even worse than crying. With gritted teeth, she took the wooden box. At least you showed some kindness. Chloe stepped closer to me, whispering her vicious insults in a voice only the two of us could hear. Wait here for me. When I return from the open sea, I'll show you how to die in the school and among the clubs. She had no idea that, deep within the wooden box containing that luxurious champagne, along with the sealed rubber stopper, there was a military-grade miniature waterproof GPS locator and wireless data transmission module implanted there. As soon as this bottle of wine was brought onto the ship, its real-time coordinates, speed of movement, and surrounding maritime signals would be continuously transmitted to my mobile phone's monitoring software. After delivering the gift, I didn't stop for a moment, but instead slowly turned my gaze towards Eric, who stood nearby with a pale face. Eric, since everyone is here today, and teachers and classmates are also present, let's settle some of these matters once and for all. I took out several legal documents from the folder beside the wheelchair. These documents were issued by the legal firm I work for. Here they are. A detailed list of all the funds you borrowed from me during our relationship, totaling 128,000 yuan. Each transaction is accompanied by a bank transfer receipt and your own handwritten IOU. This also includes the agreement to terminate all joint financial obligations between us. Eric's face turned from a deep purple to a bright red, then back to a pale white. Are you crazy? Is this what you're trying to do now? To make me sign this now? Are you trying to make it unforgettable, right? Your borrowing situation is clear, and the legal implications are also clear. My voice was calm, but my eyes were sharp like knives. Everyone here is a witness today. Either sign now to confirm your debt and terminate the agreement, thereby clearing all financial disputes between us. Or I can have my lawyer apply for pre-litigation property preservation at the Maritime Court and the District Court right now. All of the accounts under your name must be frozen. The discussions among the classmates around him were like boiling hot water, instantly causing a huge explosion. My God! More than $120,000? Eric actually owes her so much money? He always shows off expensive cars and luxury watches on social media, acting like a rich kid. It seems like he's using his girlfriend's money for all his expenses. He even refuses to pay his girlfriend back, and yet he still has the nerve to mock others for not having enough money to go out on trips? How shameless! Under the piercing comments and Chloe's eyes filled with suspicion and disgust, Eric became the laughingstock of the entire room. He was trembling violently, with veins bulging on his forehead. There was no way for him to escape under such public scrutiny. To avoid having the freezing orders from the Maritime Court sent to him immediately, he quickly grabbed the pen and signed his name on all the documents. Then, he threw the pen onto the ground. Sign it. I've signed it already. From now on, there's no longer any relationship between me and you. Are you satisfied now? Eric screamed hysterically. I'm very satisfied. Thank you for your cooperation. I instructed the caregiver to gather up all the legally binding signed documents, then sat gracefully on the wheelchair, giving them a slight smile and waving my hand. Well then, may your journey in the open sea be unforgettable. Under the complex gazes of everyone present, Chloe tried to maintain her composure, leading her followers, who looked extremely displeased and seemed to be growing apart from each other, away from the dock. A few minutes later, with a loud whistle piercing through the clouds, the white cruise ship, filled with arrogance, vanity, and greed, slowly departed from the dock, heading towards the turbulent waters of the open sea. I sat in the back seat of the taxi, watching the tiny white dot of the ship fade away. I took out my phone. The location tracking app on the screen was successfully activated. A small red dot indicating the cruise ship was slowly moving across the nautical chart. In the professional maritime weather warning system that I had turned on, a massive deep red cyclone was rapidly forming in the middle of the open sea. The wind speed at its center had risen to 16 levels, and it was headed straight towards the cruise ship. After the cruise ship entered international waters, all signals from land began to fail completely. But on my phone's screen, that small red dot representing the location of the cruise ship continued to blink clearly on the map. The maritime locator device in the champagne wooden box kept transmitting data to my satellite receiver. Speed, latitude, longitude, and the angle of the ship's pitch. At this moment, I was lying in the bed of the hospital room, watching the weather radar screen show a deep red cyclone, the sea god, which had evolved into a powerful typhoon. Its wind circle was moving at an alarming speed towards the center of the open sea, and the warning level had been upgraded to the highest level. Red waves and typhoon warnings. According to standard maritime regulations, all ships navigating in that area must immediately return to port or take refuge in the nearest safe harbor upon receiving such warnings. In the cockpit of the cruise ship, far out at sea, the alarm sound suddenly rang out. The old captain looked at the red emergency alert message displayed on the maritime weather monitor, and his face turned instantly pale with fear. He immediately pressed the engine control button, ready to turn around and return to shore. But at that moment, the door to the cockpit was slammed open. Chloe rushed in, along with Eric and a few assistants, holding professional recording equipment that was currently in offline recording mode. "What are you doing? Why did you slow down suddenly?" Chloe demanded angrily. "My party just started. We still have to host a live broadcast on the ocean deck. How can I explain this to all the fans online now?" "Madam, please leave," the old captain scolded sternly. "The powerful typhoon sea god will strike this area in 2 hours. The wind and waves will reach level 14 or higher. We must return immediately." "Return? Impossible." Chloe's face twisted in anger. For this party, she abandoned all her options, even resorting to using inferior fuel to save money. Once she returned, her reputation and financial situation would be completely ruined. "What typhoon? I think you're just trying to make excuses to avoid work. This ship is a luxury cruise ship. How could it possibly fail to withstand even a slight storm?" The old captain couldn't be bothered to talk to her anymore. So he immediately picked up the maritime radio transmitter to report the ship's location to the Coastal Rescue Center. However, Eric, who wanted to show off in front of Chloe, rushed forward and snatched the captain's communication equipment and maritime satellite phone, throwing it onto the ground. Plastic and parts scattered everywhere, and the only official communication link was instantly cut off. "Have you lost your mind? This is a crime." The captain was furious. "Shut up," Chloe demanded loudly, her eyes filled with arrogance and reckless determination. "I am the tenant of this ship. No one is allowed to return before the scheduled time has ended. Whoever tries to disrupt my party will not be able to escape any consequences." To prevent crew members from returning without permission, Chloe even ordered Eric and a few of her subordinates who were tied to her by promises of benefits to lock the control panel in the cockpit, blocking all channels through which weather warnings could be issued. She told those on shore that they were just experiencing a little wave, which is normal for a cruise experience. She continued to force everyone to drink and celebrate on the deck and in the banquet hall. However, deadly problems soon arose. Because Chloe had privately purchased low-quality, highly impure fuel from unscrupulous suppliers last night, when the cruise ship began to shake violently in the increasing waves, the impurities deposited at the bottom of the fuel tank were completely stirred up, quickly blocking the fuel injectors of the main engine. With a dull rumble, the engine at the rear of the cruise ship began to roar under excessive pressure. Soon after, the main propellers completely stopped functioning. The entire massive cruise ship lost all its power in the vast darkness of the ocean. It was like a huge metal coffin, being pushed forward by the powerful ocean currents, without any ability to resist, towards the center of the typhoon's stormy eye. In the depths of the open sea, darkness reigns supreme. The powerful typhoon sea god is like a dark beast awakened from ancient times, with its furious roar tearing everything apart. It forced the powerless luxury cruise ship to the edge of the storm. Black waves towering dozens of meters crashed against the ship's hull, emitting a metallic sound that was both painful and terrifying. Inside the cabin, silence and chaos prevailed. The main engine was completely damaged due to poor quality fuel, and the backup generator failed due to severe vibrations. The entire cruise ship's electrical system collapsed in an instant. All lights went out, except for the harsh red emergency lights, which flickered in the darkness, casting eerie shadows. "What's going on? Why is the power gone? Where is the captain? Help! The ship is falling to one side. Are we going to sink?" In the once magnificent banquet hall, the priceless crystal chandeliers fell to the ground, breaking into pieces. Tables, chairs, wine bottles, and luxurious dishes slid across the sloping floor, crashing into the crowd. Screams, cries, and the sound of metal breaking filled the air throughout the ship. In the face of extreme fear, all those so-called sisterly bonds and high-class social interactions from her past disappeared instantly. Chloe fell to the ground, her hair in disarray. Her exquisite dress was torn apart by glass shards, and her delicate makeup was completely ruined by tears and sweat. She desperately tried to climb towards the doorway of the cabin, hoping to reach the highest deck. And those assistants who usually obey her orders, Lisa and Mark, now saw nothing but endless resentment in their eyes. Having learned the truth about Chloe's misappropriation of funds and her insults towards them. "Take your dirty hands off me." Mark kicked away Chloe, who was clinging to his pants. His voice twisted with fear. "It's all your fault. If you hadn't bought those worthless oils at a cheap price, if you hadn't blocked the radio so that we couldn't report anything, how would we have ended up in this horrible place? You wretch. I'm a member of the organization. How dare you treat me like this?" Chloe screamed, trying to show her former arrogance. But what came back at her was a fierce kick from Lisa. Lisa snatched the only life jacket that Chloe was holding, and scolded her loudly. "Pretending to be a noblewoman? You're just a selfish and self-important fool. Die!" On the other side, the so-called loving boyfriend Eric had already abandoned Chloe. At a moment of life or death, he revealed his most brutal nature. In his attempt to seize the few remaining life jackets, he violently attacked his classmates, who were usually his friends, with his fists. He even pushed a girl who was standing in front of the safety door down the steep stairs. "Get out of here! Get away from me! I want to get on first." Eric's eyes were red, like those of a mad beast. He rushed towards the deck, stepping over the fallen people. No one noticed that in the corner of the banquet hall and above the main deck, several emergency cameras equipped with independent power sources and satellite signals were capturing the scene of hell on Earth, people trampling on each other, fighting over life jackets, revealing each other's sins, and attacking one another. And, through the automatic distress channel provided on the ship, high-definition video data was continuously transmitted to land. The wind rushed across the deck like sharp blades. Boom! A wave towering 20 meters high crashed against the deck with tremendous force. The anti-wave glass shattered instantly, and the overwhelming force of the seawater completely knocked people in the cockpit and on the deck to the ground. Chloe was knocked onto the hard metal deck by the huge wave. A crisp sound of bone breaking could be heard as her right leg broke. She screamed in agony. "Eric! Save me! My leg is broken! Please help me!" Not far away, Eric was holding a life jacket in his arms. He glanced at Chloe, who was struggling desperately in the water. His eyes showed no hesitation, only coldness and disgust. He didn't even hesitate for a second before running towards the stern of the ship. "Get out of here! Don't drag me down!" Eric's voice was drowned out by the violent wind and waves. The entire massive cruise ship began to tilt severely at a rate that was visible to the eye. The freezing cold seawater rushed into the lower decks of the ship. Everyone on board fell into deep despair. They cried out in pain and cursed, begging for mercy amidst the darkness and the storm. The wind howls fiercely, and it seems as though the sky is collapsing. The earth is sinking into the abyss. On the open sea, violent waves resemble black claws that repeatedly push the luxury cruise ships into the depths of the abyss. The immense angle of the ship's tilt causes a painful metallic screech as water rushes into the lower decks, like a flood breaking through the dikes. At moments when everyone is lost in despair, the internet world on land suddenly witnesses towering waves of destruction. I sit in a dry and warm room, calmly watching the flashing data streams on the screen. Using the Maritime Public Data Interface and backup satellite signals, I have compiled all the footage captured by the cruise ship's emergency cameras, along with the key evidence collected earlier. Without hesitation, I click gently on the keyboard. A message with the title scene of a luxury cruise ship's emergency. Human-induced blockage of survival channels and despicable human interactions was sent simultaneously to major mainstream news outlets, maritime rescue agencies, and popular social media platforms. In an instant, the entire internet became abuzz with excitement. My God! Isn't this ship the same luxury cruise ship involved in the Chloe incident? Look at the live footage. Isn't that Eric? He actually pushed a fellow passenger down the stairs in order to save him? This is completely insane. The captain is trying to return the ship, but they smashed the satellite phone just so they could broadcast live. And they even locked the cockpit shut. And then there's the fuel issue. Evidence shows that they purchased cheap, watered-down fuel to save money, which led to the engine failing completely. Millions of netizens were shocked when they saw the live footage. I thought this was a luxurious and enviable graduation experience. But what I encountered behind the scenes was something utterly disgusting, selfish, and illegal. The anger of the public instantly ignited the entire internet, and all major platforms became flooded with searches like #live broadcast of ship sinking in international waters, #, Chloe's misuse of funds and poor fuel quality, #, Eric's intentional harm and seizure of life-saving equipment, #, marine rescue in progress, # under the overwhelming pressure of public opinion and with the attention of the public. The National Maritime Search and Rescue Center, along with international maritime rescue forces, quickly responded. Several heavy patrol ships and large maritime search and rescue helicopters rushed towards the location, facing strong winds and huge waves. But by that time, the sinking of the ship was already irreversible. With a loud explosion, the massive ship's hull couldn't withstand the continuous blows from the waves, and it broke in half, with the rear part quickly sinking into the dark, icy waters. "Help! Save me! I don't want to die!" Chloe, with her right leg broken, cried out in despair in the cold seawater. Her head was covered in blood, and the pride of once a diva had vanished completely. She struggled like a drowning dog against the waves. Not far away, Eric, holding a lifebuoy he had snatched from someone else, was being smashed against the railing by huge waves. The pain from broken ribs made him cry out in agony. The seawater was ice cold, and the huge waves swallowed them again and again, then spat them out. They experienced the ultimate fear of death in darkness and suffocation. This was the same pain they inflicted upon me in my previous life. Now, they were facing the consequences of their actions, under the eyes of thousands of people around the world. Half an hour later, the lights of the search and rescue helicopter pierced through the thick fog, shining on the chaotic sea surface. The rescue workers descended along the ropes, beginning their urgent efforts to save those who were drowning. All of this was faithfully recorded by the surveillance cameras, and the footage was transmitted live to the entire network of viewers. I watched on the screen as Chloe and Eric were lifted up by the rescue net, shivering with cold and suffering from severe injuries. I sneered inwardly, then slowly closed the live broadcast window. The dawn broke through the clouds, and the harsh sunlight illuminated the ground at the emergency dock. Although the storm was gradually subsiding in the distance, the atmosphere on land remained tense. Dozens of ambulances, police cars, and security patrol vehicles, equipped with sharp sirens, filled the entire dock with traffic. A long security line was set up at the scene, and journalists from dozens of major media outlets stood by, their cameras fixed on the direction where the rescue ship would dock. The crane of the rescue ship slowly lowered, and several groups of survivors, clad in cold-resistant clothing, drenched and covered in injuries, were carried onto the stretchers. Among these survivors, the most eye-catching ones were Chloe and Eric, who once seemed invincible. At this moment, where is Chloe, still the school beauty and gentlewoman of the elite? Her hair, once carefully groomed, now lies in disheveled clumps on her blood-stained cheeks. Her entire body is covered in salt and mud from the sea. Her right leg is bent in a twisted position, tied with a temporary fixation device. Even a slight touch can cause her to scream in a loud, painful manner. "My leg, is it broken? Doctor, please help me." Chloe trembles violently on the stretcher, her eyes filled with fear and despair, her lips turning black and pale. Behind her, on another stretcher, Eric also looks in a state of utter despair. Due to the fighting among passengers over the use of life-saving equipment on the ship, Eric suffered severe injuries to many parts of his body. His face was covered in bruises, his eyes were swollen to the point of barely opening, and 2 of his ribs were broken by the powerful waves. Every breath he took was accompanied by intense coughing and painful groans. "Get out of the way! I'm a victim! I need to see my lawyer!" Eric continued to scream hysterically at those around him, trying to mask his fear with false bravado. However, the expected compassion for victims never arrived. The stretchers carrying the injured person had just been pushed down onto the landing platform, and before they could even reach the back door of the ambulance, Several uniformed maritime police officers and security guards stepped forward, blocking the path of the medical staff with no expression on their faces. The head of the maritime police squad spoke with a cold demeanor. He extracted 2 official documents stamped with bright red seals from his briefcase and read them aloud in front of everyone. Chloe, Eric, please stop. We are from the Maritime Safety Investigation Unit and the city's Public Security Police Department. Before he could finish speaking, flashlights began flashing wildly, and reporters pressed their microphones so close to the police officers and the stretcher that it was almost uncomfortable. According to the Maritime Traffic Safety Law and the Criminal Code, the officer said, his voice clearly heard through the sound system, you 2 are suspected of deliberately blocking and damaging the ship's communication equipment during maritime navigation. You also interfered with the captain's normal emergency navigation efforts. Additionally, you purchased and used substandard fuel, causing the ship's engines to fail, thereby leading to a major maritime disaster. At the same time, the officer turned to look at Eric, whose face was twisted in pain. According to the emergency surveillance footage from the ship, Eric is suspected of using violence to harm others at a critical moment, forcibly taking away emergency equipment, and causing serious injuries to several people. You 2 will now be arrested and investigated according to the law. With a click, 2 pairs of cold handcuffs were placed around Chloe and Eric's wrists, under the watchful eyes of the cameras. The sound of metal clinking echoed loudly in the air. No! This isn't real. I'm innocent. Chloe looked at the handcuffs around her wrists, her emotions breaking down completely. She screamed wildly, but this caused her right leg's broken wound to hurt even more, making her sweat profusely. It was the captain who made the mistake. The oil merchant tricked me. I'm just a boat rental agent. I don't know anything. Why are you arresting me? Let me go! Do you know who I am? Eric also barked like a mad dog, trying to break free from the police's control. I was forced to do this. It was Chloe who forced me to do all this. She bought all the oil, and it was her who told me to break the satellite phone. I was just following her orders. You should arrest her. It has nothing to do with me. In the face of life and death, these 2 people immediately turned into complete bullies. The once seemingly invincible love couple had suddenly become a laughingstock to everyone. Standing outside the security line, I wore a comfortable uniform, wrapped in a coat, and stood just 10 meters away from them. My face still had a slight pallor from a recent illness, but under the sunlight, my eyes were sharp and deep, like those of an eagle. Hearing the sound, Chloe turned her head with difficulty. In the midst of the noisy crowd, she saw me, standing there calmly, staring at her from above. At that moment, Chloe's eyes widened dramatically, her emotions shifting from shock, confusion, and jealousy to overwhelming fear and horror. She remembered the bottle of champagne inscribed with smooth sailing that I gave her before setting out on the voyage. She remembered my seemingly accidental acute appendicitis, and the precise emergency rescue operations and the surveillance video that was instantly broadcast online. It's you, right? Chloe pointed at me, her voice hoarse and trembling with anger and fear. You framed me. You weren't actually sick at all. You did it on purpose from the beginning. You're the one who caused us this trouble. The media and crowd gathered around watched as she pointed at me. I didn't back down, nor did I show any signs of nervousness. I walked forward with steady steps, accompanied by 2 representatives from the legal team. I took a thick document from the lawyer's hands, smiled at all the cameras and the maritime police, and spoke clearly. Officer, as a representative of the public in this case, as well as a victim, I hereby submit these supplementary evidence to the police and the maritime investigation team. I pointed to the official seal and data report on the document. This includes complete chat records of Chloe's private transactions with illegal oil merchants, bank transfer records, and professional test reports showing that batch of inferior fuel caused the engines to stop. There are also recordings of Eric forcing me to give him large amounts of money before he set out to sea, and repeatedly using words and actions to coerce other students. Shut up, you bitch. Shut up now. Chloe, hearing these undeniable evidence, completely lost her mind. She rushed towards me like a madwoman, but was quickly held back by the police. By the way, I said, looking at those 2 people with a cold expression, like crazy dogs drowning in water. I have already hired a lawyer to file a lawsuit against Eric, demanding the repayment of the $128,000 he owes me. I've also filed a criminal complaint against Chloe for her online defamation of my reputation. Your revelry is over. I stepped closer to Chloe on the stretcher, speaking in a voice only she could hear. The police didn't give them any chance to resist anymore. They dragged those two people, who were pale and limp, into the heavily guarded police ambulance. With the loud siren ringing, the police car drove away towards the hospital's intensive care unit and the detention center. In the intensive care unit of the hospital attached to the detention center, a pungent smell of disinfectant permeated the air. Outside the ward doors, two police officers were standing guard vigilantly. Inside the ward, Chloe and Eric, who were confined in their beds, were equipped with numerous monitoring devices. But what felt even more despairing to them was the legal documents laid before them. Members of the Maritime Security Joint Investigation Team, along with representatives from the prosecution, placed a thick stack of evidence on the table. Chloe, this is a complete record of surveillance and communication data we obtained from the Maritime Data Center, said the investigator, his voice cold and deliberate. The evidence shows that before the storm hit, the captain warned you 3 times to return to port and informed you of any abnormalities with the fuel levels. However, in order to maintain the popularity of your live broadcasts on social media, you secretly seized the satellite communication equipment and instructed Eric to damage it, thereby rendering the ship completely unable to send for help. I just don't want to ruin the atmosphere. Chloe's face turned pale, her voice trembling as she tried to defend herself. Don't want to ruin the atmosphere? The prosecutor sneered. The transfer records, chat logs, and statements from the intermediary showing that you purchased cheap mixed fuel from illegal oil merchants have all been verified. Your actions constitute crimes of serious liability accidents, hazardous material accidents, and intentional endangerment of public safety on international waters. Hearing these charges, which could cost her her entire life if she were convicted, Chloe's mind went blank, and tears burst out from her eyes. No! That oil merchant deceived me. I didn't know there was anything wrong with the oil. And it was Eric who damaged the satellite phone. It had nothing to do with me. Stop lying! Eric, who was lying next to her, screamed loudly. Ignoring the pain in his ribs, he shouted, "It was you who ordered me to do this. You said that anyone who dared to return would be killed. I was the one who was influenced by you. You coward! When we were rescuing those people, why didn't you say that I was the one who influenced you?" Chloe spat out words of hatred at Eric, filled with extreme hatred and fear. Behind me, there were lawyers from the Maritime Insurance Company and the ship rental company. When they saw me arrive, the noise in the room stopped immediately. Chloe and Eric's eyes were filled with hatred and fear, and they instinctively stepped back. "What are you doing here? Are you here to mock us?" Eric roared out, his teeth clenched in anger. I walked over to the bedside, pulled up a chair, and sat down gracefully. I signaled the lawyer to place a prepared document in front of us. "Do you think this is a joke?" "No. I'm here to conduct the final settlement of your personal debts." I spoke with a smile, my voice calm and devoid of any emotion. The lawyer opened the document and read out the details as instructed. First, regarding the compensation for the destruction of the luxurious cruise ship involved in this case. According to the Maritime Insurance Company and the charter contract, the charterer Chloe used inferior fuel and deliberately damaged the communication and evacuation equipment. Therefore, the insurance company refuses to assume any responsibility for compensation. The charterer has filed a lawsuit in court, demanding full compensation from Chloe for the damage to the ship, the costs of rescue operations, and other related losses. The total amount claimed is approximately $12 million. $2 million? Chloe's eyes almost popped out from her sockets, as she began to convulse violently. "I don't have that much money. It's impossible. This is just the beginning," the lawyer said indifferently, flipping to the next page. Secondly, the dozens of students and crew members who were injured on the ship have jointly filed claims against Chloe and Eric for civil damages and emotional distress. The initial amount claimed exceeds $4 million. Thirdly, regarding Eric's personal affairs, the lawyer turned to Eric, whose face was pale with despair. In addition to the criminal liability he must bear, our client has filed a request with the court to enforce the payment of his debt of 128,000 yuan. The court has frozen all of his bank accounts, electronic payments, and assets. He will be listed as a debtor who refuses to pay his debts. 128,000. You really want to drive me to death just because I have more than $10,000 left? Eric screamed at me, his eyes filled with bloodshot vision. That's my legal property. You must give me back every last cent of it. I looked at him coldly. Moreover, the fact that you borrowed money without paying it back, and used violence to steal life-saving equipment from the ship, has already become known throughout the internet. Your reputation is completely ruined. No company will ever hire you again. The reputation of society will be forever tarnished by this act. No, please, I beg you, considering everything we've gone through together, please spare me. Eric was completely devastated. He tried to get up from the bed, with his body aching, and begged me with his head bowed. It was Chloe who ordered me to do this. She's the one who ruined me. Get out of here. Don't touch me. I stepped back, disgusted. Chloe, who was lying on the other side, heard the staggering amount of compensation and the long prison sentence. Her once proud high society status and her reputation as a noblewoman had now turned into a laughingstock and a heavy burden of debt. All of your assets will be legally frozen and auctioned off, to be used to pay off the compensation and debts. I stood up, looking down at these two demons who had become prisoners. From today on, you will not only have to endure a long and endless prison sentence, but you will also be burdened with a debt that you will never be able to pay back. You will have to survive under the scorn of everyone else. Without giving them any chance to continue acting recklessly or begging for mercy, I turned around and walked out of the hospital room with my legal team. A few weeks later, the Maritime Special Criminal Court was convened. Under the hanging national emblem, the atmosphere was solemn and oppressive. The courtroom was filled with journalists from major news media, as well as the victims of the accident and their families. This major maritime disaster that had shocked the entire country finally reached its first public trial. On the defendant's side, Chloe and Eric were escorted into the courtroom in prison uniforms, with handcuffs on their wrists and legs. In just 1 month, the two had lost their former arrogance and glamour. Chloe's right leg was permanently disabled due to delayed treatment. She could only walk with a limp, her face pale and sunken, her eyes hollow. Eric, on the other hand, had lost a great deal of weight. His eyes were filled with fear and despair, and his entire body seemed to show signs of devastation. However, as the judge struck the gavel to declare the beginning of the trial, the calm courtroom instantly turned into a battlefield where two people were fighting each other. Your Honor, I have important information that I want to disclose right now. As the prosecutor finished reading the indictment, Eric rushed forward, his voice screaming at the microphone. Everything was planned by Chloe alone. From renting illegal ships to purchasing inferior fuel, all those actions were done out of greed for bribes and to save money. She even told me before setting out to sea that she wanted to keep certain people who didn't meet her standards out in the open sea. The courtroom was filled with chaos, and the sound of reporters' cameras was heard everywhere. You're talking nonsense. You shameless bastard. Chloe, hearing Eric's accusations, became completely overwhelmed with anger. She couldn't care about the intense pain in her leg. She suddenly stood up, with her cold handcuffs still on, and rushed towards Eric. Her claws reached out towards his face. It's you! You're the one who shattered the satellite phone. You're the one who injured your classmates on the same ship. You used others as a means to save yourself. Judge. He's the murderer. He committed intentional murder. Quiet. The defendant. Please stay quiet. The bailiff immediately stepped forward and forced the two people, who were losing control of their emotions, back to their seats. The gavel in the judge's hand sounded loudly. Under the spotlight of the courtroom, the two who once flaunted their love in the public eye now had grim faces. They used the most vicious and cruel words to push each other into the depths of sin. In order to get a shorter sentence, they revealed each other's past scandals and misdeeds, tearing apart each other's last shreds of dignity. Just as the courtroom was in chaos, the prosecutor calmly stood up and said, Your Honor, We request that the key witness in this case be called to testify, and that evidence that has been rigorously analyzed by maritime technical experts be presented. The doors of the courtroom slowly opened. I entered the courtroom in a neat dark suit, walking with steady steps. My presence instantly silenced Chloe and Eric on the defendant's side. Their eyes were filled with endless hatred and despair as they stared at me. I walked up to the witness stand, faced the judge, and after taking the oath as required, I stated clearly, "Your Honor, regarding the claims by the defendants Chloe and Eric of being unaware and passively following each other, I have here a report on electronic data recovery issued by a legitimate forensic institution." I presented various documents and audio discs to the court officials. The reports show that 3 days before the departure, Chloe and Eric had several conversations, during which they discussed how to isolate and bully their classmates in the open sea, as well as how to forcibly confiscate personal items. Additionally, regarding the purchase of inferior fuel, Eric was fully aware of this situation and assisted Chloe in signing a private agreement in order to gain benefits from the illegal intermediary. On the large screen in the courtroom, the chat records and transfer details were displayed clearly. It was undeniable evidence, with no room for doubt. "No, this isn't true. She's trying to frame us. She did it on purpose." Chloe collapsed on the defendant's seat, her face turning pale with despair. Moreover, I turned around and looked at Eric coldly. Regarding Eric's suspected involvement in violent injuries, the ship's backup surveillance system recorded 1080p high-definition footage of the entire incident. Every action, every violent assault is clearly recorded in a timeline, along with reports of the victim's injuries. There is no possibility of shifting blame or avoiding responsibility. As a series of indisputable evidence was presented in court, the two defendants' lies and excuses were completely shattered. The judge struck the gavel to announce the verdict. Defendant Chloe was convicted of crimes against public safety at sea, major liability accidents, and violations related to hazardous materials. She was sentenced to 18 years in prison, with all her personal property being confiscated, and she was also required to bear substantial civil compensation liabilities. Defendant Eric was convicted of intentional injury, theft of life-saving equipment, and crimes against public safety at sea. He was sentenced to 15 years in prison, deprived of certain political rights, and was also required to bear corresponding civil and debt obligations. Judge, I won't accept this decision. I will appeal. The moment the judgment was read out, the verdict became like a heavy hammer, shattering their last shred of hope. Chloe collapsed under the defendant's seat, crying out in despair. Meanwhile, Eric was dragged away from the courtroom, his eyes vacant, as if his soul had been drained from his body. In the visiting room of the high-security prison, a dull and cold atmosphere permeated the air. Heavy bulletproof glass divided the room into 2 sections. I sat gracefully on the chair, wearing a sleek white suit. My expression was calm as I watched the iron door opposite me being slowly opened. Along with the harsh sound of metal rubbing against each other and the sound of chains dragging across the floor, Chloe and Eric were brought in by the prison guards, one at a time. In just a few months, life in prison had torn them apart. Chloe wore a gray prison uniform. Her once proud hair was now cut into short, messy strands. Her right leg was severely disabled, causing her to limp constantly. She looked extremely thin, her eyes filled with numbness and resentment. Eric, on the other hand, was hunched over, his face pale and sunken. The once carefree and arrogant attitude has now disappeared completely, leaving only utter devastation behind. When they saw me sitting across the glass, their bodies trembled violently, and their eyes burst forth with a mixture of hatred and fear. I picked up the intercom phone on the wall and pressed the connect button. On the other side of the glass, Chloe's voice was hoarse and trembling as she grabbed the phone. "What are you doing here? Do you want to see how miserable we are? Are you satisfied? I have nothing left. My legs are damaged, and I'll have to spend 18 years in prison here. Are you happy now?" Another phone, which was hanging nearby, was taken away by Eric. He screamed at me through the glass, hysterically. "It's you, right? You're the one who did all this. You weren't really suffering from appendicitis at all. You've been planning this from the beginning. You wicked woman." I listened to the hysterical shouts coming from the phone. My face didn't show any reaction at all, not even a hint of a frown. I leaned in slightly, closer to the glass, and spoke in a calm and rhythmic tone. You were right. My voice was soft, but it felt like a cold steel needle, precisely hitting their hearts. From the beginning, I never intended to board that ship at all. The hospital reports I received, the leave request I issued, even the champagne with the locator device that was given to you was carefully prepared by me. The two people across the glass were shocked, their pupils contracting violently. And that information about the cheap and inferior fuel discounts. It was also something I accidentally shared with Chloe. I saw Chloe's face turn pale in an instant. I continued. I know you are greedy. I know you want to use public funds to make a good impression. I also know that you will never miss this opportunity to save money. I even know that when the typhoon comes, with your arrogance and selfishness, you will definitely force them to turn off their satellite phones, arrest the captain, and push yourselves into a desperate situation. When did you start scheming against us? Chloe went mad, punching the bulletproof glass with her fists. Tears and snot flowed down her face. Why would you do this? What have we done to provoke you? Because you deserve to die. I looked at them, my eyes cold like the freezing seawater in the deep ocean. In your previous life, when you pushed me into the sea, did you think about today? When you were on the deck, watching me drown in the storm, did you hear my cries for help? Hearing words like past life and being pushed into the sea, Chloe and Eric's faces showed utter confusion. Soon, a deep sense of fear and uncertainty took hold of them. In their eyes, the person before them seemed like a devil who knew everything, without any room for error. Today, I'm here to bring you some good news, I said, tapping gently on the folder in front of me. First, Chloe, all your personal deposits, vehicles, and properties have been compulsorily auctioned off by the Maritime Court yesterday morning. The proceeds were used to pay compensation for the students who were lost at sea, as well as to cover the claims from the shipping company. Now, not only do you have no assets left, but you also owe millions in debt. Chloe's body twitched violently, her eyes rolled back, and she was on the verge of fainting. Second, Eric. I turned to look at Eric, who was already pale with fear. Your debt of $128,000 has been deducted from the proceeds from the auction of the only house your parents left to you. From now on, you are not only a criminal, but also a permanent dishonorable person on the national blacklist of those who have committed crimes. After 15 years, when you are released from prison, there will be no place for you in society anymore. No, please stop talking. I beg you, don't say anything more. Eric was completely broken down. He sat down on the ground, crying like a dying animal. All those things that were most important to you, reputation, money, status, future, all of them are gone now. I stood up, looking down at those two people who were struggling in despair through the glass. For the next 10 years, you will suffer physical and mental torment day after day, confined behind those high walls. And this is what you deserve. I hung up the phone, without even looking at them again. I turned around and walked straight out of the visitation room. The moment I stepped out of the high-pressure prison, the sunlight spilled down from above me, falling on my shoulders and bringing back a long-lost sense of warmth. In the distance, the sky was clear and blue, without any clouds, storms, or the icy seawater of the open sea. I stood on the steps, taking a deep breath, the air filled with the scent of dirt and flowers. The nightmares, suffocation, and endless hatred that had haunted me in my past life now disappeared completely. Those demons who pushed me into the abyss had paid a terrible price within the high walls and legal nets they had created. They now lie buried in their own pits of despair. I picked up the luggage I had prepared in advance and headed straight for the airport. In the airport waiting hall, the large windows reflected the clear sky, and the sounds of planes taking off and landing echoed loudly in the corridors. I sat by the boarding gate, turning on the tablet in my hand. Several emails appeared on the screen, all from top-tier research institutions specializing in maritime technology and marine engineering. The topmost email was from one of these institutions. The title of the email was clear and solemn. Notice of full scholarship award and employment contract for core research projects. At last week's Global Maritime Academic Conference, I received unanimous praise from the committee of that research institute for my independently developed maritime positioning tracking system and public maritime warning data model. They not only granted me a full scholarship, but also appointed me as a young researcher in the Intelligent Maritime Safety and Warning Project team. Dear Ms., your name. Congratulations on passing the final review. We look forward to seeing you leading in this new field. I smiled warmly at the words at the end of the email. There was no longer any false love, no malicious bullying, and no more heavy social obligations. With justice, wisdom, and the courage to never compromise, I not only achieved a complete revenge but also personally shattered the darkness, paving a new and bright path for myself in life. Flight BA-168 to London is about to depart. Please gather your belongings. The clear and gentle voice echoed through the speakers. I stood up, adjusted the corners of my clothes, opened my suitcase, and walked towards the boarding gate with a firm and graceful stride. Crossing the long bridge, I entered the cabin and found a seat by the window. A few minutes later, the plane accelerated on the runway, soaring into the sky, leaving the city behind and everything else behind us in the clouds. Sunlight streamed in through the window, filling my entire body with warmth. I leaned back in my seat, watching the endless blue sky above me. The revenge was over, but a new and glorious life began. This is my life, new and free.